Now batting for the Savannah Bananas, number 24, Trey Griggs.
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Standing Out, a podcast about sales, marketing, and leadership. I'm your host, Trey Griggs. So excited that you are here with us today. As we get the show started off today, just a couple of things to shout out. First of all, we're like 2.5 months away from the next Broker Carrier Summit down in Fort Worth, Texas. If you are a broker or a carrier looking to find like-minded partners, make sure you sign up for that. Go to brokercarriersummit.com and register today. Early bird pricing, I think, just expired, but if you use the code BETA, B-E-T-A, get 10% off there. And we will see you in Fort Worth. Do not forget to sign up for the Post and Pray Classic, the best golf tournament in the industry. Again, brokercarriersummit.com. We'll see you in Fort Worth, October 23rd through 25th. And make sure that you sign up today. Also, want to make sure that you we got some announcements coming up for the month of September. We got a new sponsor alert. Can't wait to talk about that in September coming up here. Gosh, hard to believe Labor Day is right around the corner. And if you're listening to us today on Reeds Across America Radio, thank you so much for tuning in. So excited to be part of their lineup every Tuesday, their Trucking Tuesday lineup. If you haven't sponsored a wreath yet for the upcoming event in December to put wreaths on the tombstones of our veterans, make sure you go to reedsacrossamerica.org/standing out and sponsor a wreath today. We would love for you to be a part of our effort to raise money and awareness for what our veterans have done for our future generations. So again, reedsacrossamerica.org/standing out and donate today. Finally, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, SPI Logistics, good guys up in Vancouver, British Columbia. Listen, if you're a freight broker, kind of tired of having your back office, or maybe you're a freight agent, not happy with where you are today, check these guys out over at success.spi3pl.com. They got the technology systems, back office support, and admin to help you succeed, help you stay in your sweet spot. So again, check them out at success.spi3pl.com. Let them know you heard about it right here on Standing Out. All right, so excited for today's guest. As you know, we always like to bring you industry experts and leaders in the fields of sales, marketing, and leadership. And today's guest is no exception. A good friend of mine from the company over at Highway doing some amazing things. Please give it up for our good friend and the Chief Operating Officer, Michael Caney. What's up, brother?
What's up, Trey?
I know you like this song. You got to let it run just a little bit. No dancing on your side, man. We got to work on this, dude. We got to work on it. I know Michael Caney can dance. I know you can dance, dude.
Man, I wish that was the case. I wish it was the case. I tried a lot in college, but there was alcohol involved, and so who knows? Like my dancing that I thought was great was probably not awesome, but I gave it.
There's somebody out there that has seared in their brain Michael Caney dancing somewhere. I can't get.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I feel sorry for all of those poor souls. It's funny when you play that song, like a big song, like probably early '90s, Trey.
Dude,
right?
90s, like, middle school for me, man. Yeah.
All I can think about in that song is the scene in Mrs. Doubtfire when he throws the party for his kids, and there's like a petting zoo, and it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back when Sally Field just gives him the boot.
Man, I forgot about that. That's right. I forgot about that. That was a great song. Yeah, that was like a middle school song for me. That was kind of a big one back in the day. So nice to have a little bit of a throwback. All right, man, listen, we're going to talk about Highway a little bit today, but we're also going to talk a lot about sales and marketing today because that's a big part of what you do. You help companies really accelerate growth. And we're going to talk about that today, which is awesome. So as we get started today, just give a little 30-second elevator pitch for Highway. What do you guys do in the industry? And man, it's just exciting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when we came into the market, what we really were kind of a category creator around this concept of carrier identity. Right. Nobody was really talking about it in that way. It was onboarding, it was compliance, there was insurance monitoring. There were these kind of disparate workflows. And what we did was we looked at this from a know your customer, know your business perspective, like what people are familiar with in banking and cybersecurity, and just said, hey, at the root of fraud is an identity problem. And so what Highway does is establishes three core truths, like who's the individual user coming to engage with a broker digitally? Are they actually a motor carrier as opposed to a bad actor or maybe a dispatch service? And do they really have the capability? And so from that, Trey, we're the fastest growing freight technology company. I think probably we're the largest onboarding company by volume today already. And in terms of compliance monitoring and identity. And then we're also the only people to take that and turn it into load level compliance. So what Highway's really doing now is delivering real-time understanding of a carrier's capability and compliance at an individual transaction level.
Yeah. And the analogy that I like to use with this is that I think historically speaking, they let everybody into the party and then try to figure out who the bad actors were in the party. Now, what you guys are doing is you're not letting them into the party at all. You're making the party much safer and keeping them out so you don't have to figure it out after the fact. And I think that's huge to think through, as you said, the root cause of what's happening with fraud,
Yeah, I mean, and historically, like it made sense to I've used that analogy too. You're absolutely right. Like, hey, let's let everybody in, and then let's walk around, and let's try to train all of our people to be like intelligence agents to just like with all of this tribal knowledge spot the bad guy. And it's like that doesn't work. And so, but the reason you wanted to let everybody in was because brokers needed to build large amounts of available capacity. And what I tell folks is like, look, we solve, Trey, for probably 3-4% of the market, but it's that 3 or 4% of the market that steals things and does bad things and costs you a customer and pilfers. And I mean, they just cause massive amounts of havoc. So to your analogy, like think about like a toll tag, right? For the good actors, you want to actually get them in as fast as possible.
Right. Make it easy.
While keeping the bad guys out. Right. If you just introduce friction across the board, it's 2 ditches, right? Make everything hard or make nothing hard. Like neither ditch is appropriate.
Yeah. I love to hear that, man. I think it makes perfect sense to do that. And it's interesting because fraud actors out there are going to continue to try to, buck the system, beat the system, those types of things. But when you do keep them out, it definitely makes it a lot easier for business to happen smoothly, which is a big deal. Now, this is interesting to me. I want to talk about this because you were brought into Highway to really accelerate growth. But what I think is fascinating about that, and I'm seeing this more and more, is that technology companies are starting to bring on operators like yourself who sat in that seat. How powerful has that been for you to say, man, I dealt with this every day, all day, and for you to kind of know what brokers are feeling? We talk about that standing out all the time on this show. That had to be a way to be a differentiator right away. Too many tech companies, I think, have never sat in the seat. They don't know what it's like to be a broker.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a couple of layers to that we can unpack. So, one, I think we entered the market at a really unique time when just SaaS, regardless of the vertical, was changing overall. So the hyper grow at all cost, throw a lot of AEs, BDRs, like that model began to shift. And I'd been kind of following that for a while. And so I was like, man, if I ever get a chance to do a tech thing again, I'm going to do it really different. And really have to give all the credit to Sam Jacobs and Scott Leese. If you work in technology and you don't follow those two guys, you're missing out. And I really just stole kind of a lot of their ideas. And so there's that aspect. One, we just didn't do it. We just didn't do this grow at all cost hyper growth thing. Right. So the second thing is, I think operators coming into technology companies in vertical specific software works really well. I think when you're kind of horizontal, like if you're just DocuSign selling to everybody, it's challenging. You have to develop a lot of domain expertise in a lot of areas, but that's just not what I do. I've worked in oil and gas software. I've worked in transportation. So I've always just been really domain specific. So I've either been an operator or I've been in domain specific technology platforms, whether it's Sonar or back when I did oil and gas for a small amount of time or this. I think what you're really talking about is how important is it to talk in terms of what a customer's going through.
Yeah, being able to relate.
Like if you just, I used to keep How to Win Friends and Influence People on my desk because I think it's really like you don't read a business book unless you read that one. And in that book, they talk about how important it is to talk in terms of the other person's interest. And so it's very different when you get some ridiculous outreach that's like, we help companies just like you do these things, everybody deletes that. Versus, hey, like, I kind of know how that feels. So when a customer tells me that a load got stuck on the rail and they had to go deal with a chain of custody, like, and I flew from Chattanooga to Elk Grove Village to Southern California and walked warehouses trying to figure out what happened to my freight. So I think the thing is, an operator can viscerally feel those problems that they're solving. And that's just a human to human thing, right? Like you got to be able to get human with somebody when you're engaging in their story. So that's kind of what I think about operators being in SaaS.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I mean, you've walked in their shoes and it comes across different. You speak the right language. It's like anything else. I mean, I played competitive golf. I can go on a golf course and hear somebody talking. I can tell if they've played some competitive golf or not, just by how they're talking.
Versus me, if I start talking about golf, I'm going to carry it for about 3 minutes, and then you're going to realize I have no idea what I'm talking about.
we might figure that out. You might get longer than 3 minutes, but it might go that way. That's for sure. I think it's important too. I was thinking back to what you guys are doing with the fraud and starting with identity. As you get more dependent upon technology for booking loads, whether it's book now features, all these things where you're really not talking to even sometimes the person behind, it's really important to know who they are. I think that we're trying to make booking freight more convenient, which I think is a great thing. But in doing that, I think it gives the bad actors more cover to do their bad acting unless you know who they are. And I think that's another reason why highway is so critical right now with the book it now and the digital bookings and things like that.
Fraud needs three things: prospective gain, anonymity, and urgency. Those are the three things that fraud needs to flourish. And so the prospective gain is pretty simple, right? I can double broker it and make stuff on the, not pay the carrier. Everyone knows how double brokering works. I can pilfer, I can steal, I can cross stock, I can warehouse, I can shake the broker down and demand money. The prospective gain is fairly simple. And you're right. We created a lot of anonymity without creating any security.
Right.
Like we said, this is great. Everybody sign a contract, get an insurance certificate. We don't really know if the truck's insured, but hey, there's a cert. And we don't know who you're calling from, where you're calling from, but yeah. And if you think about all the reporting was after the fact. It was all lagging.
Right.
Hey, this bad thing happened to me in the past, and now I'm going to go tell somebody and maybe protect the next guy. But what bad actors learned really quickly was they just needed to hold multiple MCs and get ahead of the reports.
Yeah.
By the time it got reported, they were using a different MC. So you're absolutely right. The big piece, right? So freight's always going to be urgent, right? And there's always going to be a prospective gain. But no one had dealt with the anonymity piece. And that was the big part.
Yeah. So let's shift gears to talk about the sales and marketing efforts of Highway, which you guys have done. Some things you've done a little bit differently. I'd love to hear what you're willing to share about what's been different this time around. You said if you could do it again, you would do it a little differently. You're following a couple guys, stealing their ideas. What is it? What are you guys doing?
Yeah. So I think every company, and first of all, have a great product to sell. Like if my stuff didn't work.
Right. That's number one.
A lot of people, I still do a little bit of advising, and I'll look at decks and I'll look at software, and I'll say, you could probably sell $1 million of this, but you're not going to sell 10 million because people are going to figure out it doesn't work after your first million.
Right.
You're going to go sell $1 million in ARR 10 times without getting to 10 million, trying to find product market fit. Right. So that, first of all, like that's kind of the big hurdle in getting into market and like getting a product off the ground is a lot of people don't realize that in getting to 10 million, you've sold 30 million of ARR, just breaking it and trying to figure it out. So I have to give a tremendous amount of credit to Jordan Graft and the rest of our people that had domain knowledge. We came to market with something that worked. Yeah. Right. So a lot of what I've been able to do from a go-to-market perspective is because we have an amazing development and product team. All right. Having said that, one of the things we decided to do early was we were going to build through community. We were going to build things that worked. And if someone else didn't say it, then it wasn't true. We weren't going to go do traditional product marketing that promised things we didn't deliver. Right. So we had this concept early and we called it the first 5 live. It's amazing. We have over 700 customers, 400 like integrated brokers. And I remember when we would get on leadership calls and talk about the first 5 live. And so our whole thing was like, we built something that works. We had a couple of beta buddies. And if we can just get the first 5 live and get it to work, they'll tell our story for us. And that was essentially the thesis. That was it. And that's just what we did. And we just said, if we can continue to deliver And we really had 3 core tenets. Do we need to stop? I got to tap this as recording error.
Oh,
there it goes.
Maybe on your side. I have not seen
Got
that.
it. Well, then for anybody
Well,
that's listening, I'm just paying attention to things.
Technology.
So
that's right.
Yeah. So we really have kind of 3 core tenets. One, like we want to be really responsive. We want to take responsibility for our mistakes, and we want to own the outcome. And so we just said, hey, if we build something that works, then we'll build through community. And so that's what we did really different. We hired big boy, big girl AEs that know how to sell. We didn't do the volume thing, and we built through community. And we just let the community tell our story.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you're talking about the first 5 live and let them tell our story. I'm wearing this Savannah Bananas jersey today. Right. I know it's not the highway yellow. It's close, but the idea is very similar. And that is when you really build fans. And I think that at Highway, you guys have customers that truly are fans of yours. They do tell your story. That's what they do naturally. And I wonder if I'm not sure what you would think about this. I've made the mistake before of going to a company to sell a product and it didn't work that well. And I didn't know. How would you advise somebody who's maybe wanting to get into selling technology, or how do you do that whenever you're bringing somebody on to give them the assurance that the product actually works? Do you think salespeople take jobs because they need a job, or like how would you advise them to actually evaluate a product and see if it works? Because it's miserable to sell a product that doesn't work.
Yeah. So I think it depends on stage of career. So if you're early and you are looking. So a lot of times what happens, specifically in people that are probably going to listen to us on this podcast, Trey, is you may be in an operating company and you may want to get into technology because you think it's sexy or you think it's cool, whatever. And I will tell you that selling technology is as hard as selling freight. It's a longer sales cycle. You don't get the immediate win. So don't always think the grass is greener if you're sitting at a freight brokerage. But if you're thinking about it early, you just have to go get reps, man. Like, if you're an AE and you're just looking to get into selling, you need to just learn the motion of what it's like to sell technology, what it's like to engage multiple stakeholders. Like there's just some things you've got to learn, and it doesn't, for the success of the company, the product matters, but as a personal career move, you just need to go learn. And that's how you'll learn what makes a good product, what doesn't make a good product, how to evaluate the delivery team and whether the delivery team. Now, if you're a seasoned AE, you got to really dig in. Because if you're a seasoned account executive or seller, specifically in a vertical, I don't care the vertical, what you're essentially doing is bringing your reputation with you in that vertical.
Right.
And you don't, in our business, you don't get a lot of freebies. You attach your horse to the wrong wagon, you don't get a lot of freebies. You only get to do that once.
Yeah, I felt that. I felt the pain of a customer calling me in saying this isn't working and calling me into the office and showing it to me. That is painful. And it goes to your reputation, because then if you go to another company and you call them with a new product, they're going to be like, hey, the last one.
Hey, I promise this one's different.
Right.
I know at the last one, but like this one is really different. Like you only get to try wolf so many times, right?
Right. So how did you guys talk about the community aspect of it? Because I think it's so powerful now. I mean, community and networking is really everything. How did you tap into that? So you got your first 5 live, then you got 10, 15, 20 customers, the product's working. How did you put those customers in a position to tell your story?
So go back to raving fans. So when I worked in Savannah for a couple of years, I heard about the Savannah Bananas. And the way I heard about Savannah Bananas was I was just on the floor and they were like, hey, Caney, have you heard about the Savannah Bananas? And I was like, what are you talking about? It's this minor league baseball team. And it took me a minute to realize they're more like the Harlem Globetrotters of the minor leagues or whatever.
Right.
And the same way that the first broker to ever do this well was Coyote. Back in the kind of the early 2000s, like they were the first. They hired this company called Moving Brands and they redid their logo. And so you create buzz, but you have to really deliver. Right. And so let's just double down on Coyote for a minute. Like the way that they became who they were was Jeff Silver would call, Heineken and Coca-Cola and say, if you give me this load, I will not fail it. And so early at Coyote, it was his personal reputation coming out of back haulers and saying, you know me, you know what I do. If you give me these loads, you'll never get them back. And it worked. So very similar. I knew a ton of people, and Jordan knew a ton of people, and we called our friends and we said, if you make a bet you have our word. We'll take responsibility for our mistakes. We'll own the outcome. We won't leave you hanging. And we were able to say, because I've paid a lot of freight tech bills, I was able to say, I know your current experience. Yeah. Because I've felt it. I know exactly what you're going through. And this thing and this thing and this thing that's happening to you right now, you have my word, it won't happen here. And that's how it started.
I've noticed that a lot of really solid tech companies make that play of, making a bet on themselves and coming through. And then that does a lot of the work for them. I mean, the best marketing is word of mouth. The best marketing is customers telling other customers. Getting to that point, I think, is really difficult for a lot of companies because they don't deliver. They don't come through in those cases, which is really powerful. How do you talk to, when you're leading your AEs, and I know several of them that are over there, how do you lead them in terms of, they're an extension of the leadership team. It's not their product. How do you coach them and teach them to make those promises and to do those things when it's not their product as much? I think it gets harder the further down the line you go for AEs. Talk about leadership and training for that.
Well, one thing, I keep it close. So I'm fortunate enough that I don't have a sales management layer between me and my sellers. So I was fortunate enough, again, not everybody can do it the way we did it, but I was fortunate enough to hire people that I know and that knew the industry. So what I had that really shortcut success was they either knew the industry or they knew my system. They all worked for me before, except for one individual. And so they just knew my system. They knew my expectations. They know what I could tolerate, what I like, my no-fly zones. And so all they had to do was learn to contextualize this product to this domain, because they all knew the domain. So all they had to do, right? So I didn't have a big ramp up. I was like, hey guys, what we did before, this is how we're going to do it here. And then I did a lot of calls with them early. And then the other thing, we use Gong. So if you're selling software and you're not using Gong or Chorus or something, man, you're missing out. So I could just go look at keywords. And so I try to do is just shortcut the timeline of feedback for them. I want to give them really quick feedback. And my goal was to hire salespeople that knew how to sell. And then all I had to do was teach them our culture, make sure they were aligned with our culture, and how I expected them to think about the problem that existed in a freight broker, because they knew how to sell. That wasn't the problem for them. And so, I think as a sales leader, that you have to make sure you're using tools. The category is sales enablement. Everybody talks about it. But I think you have to make sure you're using your tools not to big brother, but to really enable your sales leaders.
Yeah. And I think you said something really critical there, just kind of tucked it in there, and that is quick feedback. I think oftentimes we let people get too many at bats before we give them, feedback on what they're doing. And then a lot of times bad habits get ingrained. It's hard to overcome those sometimes when the feedback is not quick enough. How quickly are you, at the beginning, especially, when you were using Gong, or you're listening to calls, how quickly were you giving them feedback? Was it after one call? Did you listen to 5 calls? Was it a week's worth of calls? What's your best advice for a sales leader out there to help their people improve faster?
Man, I think you've got to have consistent one-on-ones. And I wasn't good at that early because we were moving so fast that we just talked all the time. We were just always talking, right? It was early. It was me and 2 sales guys, right? And so we were just always talking. And I was always talking to our chief product officer, who and I was always talking to Jordan. And so I think what you have to think about in a startup is when you have early success, you're just always talking about things. And so then when you begin to grow your team, you have to go, wait a minute, we're not just going to always naturally talk. How do we create systems for that? So then you start scheduling one-on-ones. And to answer your actual question, I would say as fast as possible. Right. But what I try not to do is have my people regurgitate lots of things to me. Hey, how do we get to the thing you need the help with most? So in Gong, we use triggers. We've got it programmed to look for certain words in certain context. And we're just kind of doing an art and science thing. We look at, is there a lack of touch point? Is there a lack of engagement from the prospect? And what we don't say is hey, what's wrong with the prospect? We're how are we failing to serve this person? So our question is always, how are we failing? We always start with, in what way have we failed to show the customer value? That's our number one thing at Highway. Always start with self. Right? Even if you got some know-it-all prospect on the other line that thinks he's God's gift to compliance. Not that any of that exists in our business. We always start with, okay, and how did we fail to serve him or her? How did we fail to ask a question? So that's always kind of the first thing. You start with self. You ask, how am I failing to serve, or how am I serving? And you try to go as quick as possible. And then if something lags, you just start with an apology to that prospect. Hey, where did we miss? I'm sorry. Which is opposite than let me find these cute ways to shove my product down your throat. Which is a lot of what happens in SaaS, right? This idea of overcoming an objection. I don't love that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that. And I want to switch gears for just a second too, because I want to talk about the impact of marketing working with sales. How do you guys just brought on, kind of a quarterback for marketing, a very talented person in our industry. But for a while you didn't have that. How do you, from your perspective, view the impact of sales and marketing working together? And how is that even accelerated even faster where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't view them as different. So it's hard for me to think about them working together, not working together. I worked in a company where they were different, and it was a horrible experience. It was like, so, what I did was I went and got aligned with an agency friend of mine that when we had a chance to work together, we were like, this should be ingrained, not in silos. And so, he was my early agency, and you gave us a lot of advice. And so from the beginning, we just said marketing is sales and sales is marketing. We're going to take a data-driven approach, and we just never thought of it different. We thought of it, man, we got to build a brand and build a culture. We got to make some promises, and we have to have good sellers that get to know our prospects and execute on those brand promises. And I have a really hard time separating that in my brain.
And I think that's why we get along so well, because I'm the same way. Like I've been at companies where there was either marketing over here and they never talked to sales, which is a bad experience, or many companies that value sales but don't put any attention into the marketing promotion side of things. And what ends up happening is the salespeople have to just do the marketing. They have to do whatever it is that marketing could help them with. They actually have to do it themselves. And so I'm the same way. I think it's impossible to sell a product without doing some marketing. We talked about this on LinkedIn. I shared this with you. Cold calling, in my opinion, is a marketing activity that a salesperson does. So salespeople do cold calls, but they're getting the word out. Like you can't sell a product without doing some marketing. They really are intertwined and inseparable. So I'm with you, man. I love hearing that from you. I love that. I think too many people don't see it that way. They put all their stock in maybe one or the other, and they don't realize how they work together.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason it works for me is because I align myself with people that agree, right? So like my marketing leader, Jessie, she's not just figuring out where to go sponsor holes at golf tournaments.
Which she should, though.
Right. She does. I mean, I think she was playing golf on Monday. But marketing is not just events and whatever, right? Like when we look at our budget and when we look at our conference attendance and where I get invited to speak to, we're really being thoughtful about where can we get close to our customers to not only tell our story, but to hear their story. So much of what we think about from a marketing perspective is where do we need to be to listen, right? At our stage of the company, early it was like we needed to solve a really acute problem. And now we've got enough, we're so ingrained that we have to be really good listeners. So for us, a lot of marketing is not just like it's not about getting leads. Like that just happens. That's just like a thing that happens, right? And we do account-based sales. We don't even use the leads function in Salesforce. What we really think about is that our marketing function is really to tell a story, is to circle and make sure that we're listening as well, because marketing has to hear from the customer, make sure that we're still aligned with what they want and need. And then we have to market internally. Product has to be aligned. Customer success has to be aligned. So a lot of what Jessie does for us is messaging that creates organizational alignment as well as market alignment. Does that make sense?
100%.
Like it's not just this siloed, like, let's go to events. Like this is not marketing.
Right. Yeah. I always think that sales and marketing is like a wheel with a lot of spokes, and you have to have all the spokes in order for the wheel to go fast. Like if you're missing spokes, the wheel starts to get out of balance. It starts to not work correctly. And I think like events is one little spoke of that. And messaging is a big part of that. A lot of people don't realize how powerful it is to have the right messaging for your internal team. So everybody's talking the same language and rowing the same direction, but also for your customers. And that starts with knowing what your customers need, what their problems are, what they're having. I always say this, if you're not talking about your customers and their problems, then you lose them. It's the reason why cable news is so popular. They only talk about problems. They don't talk about solutions. They only talk about problems. That's what keeps people engaged. You don't tune into the world news to see how great the day was. You tune in to see what blew up. right? And so people are naturally attached to hearing people talk about their problems. And
Yeah.
when you have that and you message that correctly, then you keep them engaged. And as you said, a lot of this stuff naturally happens, leads naturally happen. They start to realize these guys know what I'm dealing with and know how to solve it. I'm gonna give them a shot. I'm gonna give them a chance.
I'm not gonna go down the cable news issue, mainstream media.
Maybe it's a bad analogy,
but here's what I will say. If you look at the power of social networks, if you look at the power of X or whatever else, the other thing that people want, that they're moving away from, is a perceived authority that's going to tell me that they know more than me. And so if you look at the evolution of freight technology specifically, you went through a phase where a lot of venture capital came into the market and a lot of freight tech companies went around telling intermediaries that they were smarter than them. And I think you have a lot of overfunded companies that I'm praying they go away because they don't bring a lot of value.
Yeah.
And so now what you have is the reason community-based selling works is because people are flocking back to who will tell me the truth.
Right.
Like good, bad, or indifferent. Like there's a lot of things, Trey, we say no to. We say, hey man, that's not really our lane. We can't, man, y'all should do this. I understand where that idea is coming from, but that's not really our lane. Or if I go do that, here's 5 things that I won't do that you need me to do to keep you safe and to improve your digital experience with carriers. So so some of it's just like about being honest, right?
Yeah.
And then creating customer consensus, right? Like I'll have customers call me after, big boondoggles and be like, that was a waste of my time. They don't listen. They just tell us everything they're going to do.
Right.
And I just am like, if I ever do that, somebody shoot me in the head because I've failed. Right. Like,
yeah.
And so I think that's some of what you have to think about, because you just can't get high on your own supply, no matter how successful you are. We talk about it all the time. Like, man, if we lose, we have to keep our edge. But if you're a seller, you have to know where to be confident, and you have to balance that confidence with the right amount of humility to always want to learn.
Yeah.
Right. So when I think about the sales process, Trey, one of the things I've always told people is the best sellers are the best qualifiers. They're not the best closers. Like the consummation of a deal or closing of a deal is a result of a really good qualifying process where you genuinely want to understand not only the person you're selling to, how they sit within the company, any competing things that are going on in that company. Like deals naturally close when you just focus on the assessing and the qualifying.
Yeah.
And that takes discipline. Right. That's harder to do because it means we have to lay our ego down and care more about the person on the other end of the phone than us just getting our agenda across. And sometimes that's opposite of how a seller's wired. Right.
Yes. 100%.
And so a lot of times when sellers go from like, I sell a little bit to I'm really going to be a professional seller, man, they become as much like a good corporate therapist as they do a salesperson, because they're just listening to all of these issues and everyone's different perspective on the issue. Right. So you have to take all that information and synthesize it and then turn around and deliver it internally to then turn around and deliver the solution. Right. So it just becomes it becomes this loop. Right. I think marketing sits in the middle of that. I don't think it sits at the top. I think marketing sits in the middle, which is a different perspective than most. But I think marketing sits in the middle as a communications layer between all those things.
Yeah, and I agree completely with that. I think too many companies push themselves forward as the hero of the story, talk about how great they are. They start with all of these, awards they've won or things they've done. When the truth is, every sales engagement that you have should start with questions and conversation. Like, I hate when people show up, throw up their pitch deck, and start talking about how great their company is and what problems they solve. It's like, you don't even know what this guy's dealing with. You don't know this group of people is going through and what their problem is. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, man. Like, that's a powerful way to say that. I love the fact that you shared that. All right, man, we got to pause for a second. We're going to have a little bit of fun. I got a random question of the day. Now, before we came on air today, you talked about how you had first day of school today. Your son is a senior. You got a couple other boys as well. So the random question of the day today is not actually that random. I came up with it. I want to know this. Do you have some bucket list trips like with your sons before they graduate, like a bucket list trip with each son? What would that be? Have you thought through that? Where would you take them if you could take them anywhere? Maybe they're
watching. So I have bucket list trips with them. I won't be able to cram them in before they graduate, but I did take my 2 oldest boys just this past weekend to New York City.
Saw that.
So yeah, you saw that, right? So all my kids are like theater kids. My wife's the costume designer for the school. It's pretty cool. And so we saw Outsiders and we saw The Great Gatsby, and that was great. And that was a great like father-son thing. But I would love, and I think I'm going to go on my son's school interim trip to Ireland this year.
Nice.
But when I was young, twice I've been to Israel, and
Nice.
I've been twice, and
Wow.
I want to take my kids there. I want to take my whole family there
Yeah.
when it's safe
Oh,
enough.
yeah.
But I went in 93 and 2000, and I would really love for my kids to see that part of the world.
That's awesome. And I've heard from people that go that like, man, the Bible just comes alive because they're just seeing these things that you read about in scripture. And I think that's really cool. And,
Yeah.
from the New York standpoint, we just took our kids to New York over Christmas because they're theater kids as well. And we
Yeah.
saw, we didn't see the ones you saw. You saw kind of the guys focused ones. We saw Wicked, which
Okay.
is a phenomenal show. And we
See the
also saw
Notebook?
Hamilton. We did not see the Notebook. We did see Hamilton and Wicked, but yeah, it was just tremendous. So I love to hear that. But yeah, man, that is such a phenomenal idea to do that. I'm taking a trip with my daughter to Washington next year for their senior trip, so that's going to be really fun as well. But man,
we did DC for spring break, and so I've gotten to where like I like to do a couple things with my boys. Like we want to eat, like we just ate our way through New York City, right?
Yeah. Did you get some pizza there? Did you get some pizza in New York?
So not only did we do that, but my partner Tim
tell me
Colvin in a different business, he goes all the time with his wife, and so he told me to eat at one pizza place. And Jordan and Brittany, who used to live in New York, gave me another pizza place, and they both swore it was the best pizza in New York. So what did we do? We ate at both of them back to back and gave our opinion. We had a little vote. We had a little.
Which ones were they? I
off.
need to know.
So I don't know how you say the first one. It's Lindustry or L Industry. It's L apostrophe Industry.
Okay, Lindustry. Okay,
Italian,
I
so
haven't had
L
that.
Industry,
Right.
and then Bleecker Street Pizza, and they're both down the West Village. You can walk from one to the other.
Okay,
but that's the move, man. Go eat both. Just go gorge yourself on pizza.
Well, we didn't go to those, but we're big fans of the movie Elf. That's our favorite Christmas movie of all time. And of course, they got Ray's Pizza there, so we had to go to Ray's and just try just to see what it was like. It was decent for sliced pizza. It's not bad for grabbing a quick slice like at 11 o'clock at night. That's pretty cool. But New York pizza is definitely unique, man.
Yes, so we ate a lot, but we also went to the New York Public Library.
Oh, nice! I've been there.
And they had, and it's like the first floor is like a museum. So like they had Washington's handwritten farewell address.
Oh, wow!
They had the original stuffed animals that were like the catalyst for the Winnie the Pooh stories. The original,
really? Wow.
Yeah. Everybody but Rue. Rue got lost somewhere. We did the 9/11 memorial, which is incredibly heavy.
Yeah, very heavy.
But my kids, those boys are 15 and 18, and so to be able to have those conversations. I mean, I was taking a geology final in college. Why I took geology is a completely different podcast, but I was taking a geology final. I got in my car, and there was the whole thing. And so, but to be able to have those conversations with my boys and them see the hole in the ground and the twisted steel, it made for a deep day, but a really kind of good father-son day.
Yeah. And that museum's tremendous. We were in there for 6 hours and it felt like we were in there for 1 or 2. Like it was just it was amazing displays, the exhibits they had there. Yeah. Absolutely tremendous. That's cool. Hey,
you can't get to that museum without some tears. Like
no. It's unbelievable.
You just can't do it.
It's unbelievable. It's a phenomenal museum, phenomenal exhibit. And I love the fact that they have the Freedom Tower right there now. I mean, it's just neat what they've done there. It's incredibly sad to see it. That is heavy. Speaking of musicals, my daughter and I just auditioned for Newsies together at Missouri Baptist University, and we both So we get to do one.
What role? So my middle son's second musical, he was Les.
No, that's a great role, man. That's awesome. So my daughter is one in the ensemble, so she didn't get a newsy role, but she's the ensemble, and I'm Sights, which is kind of the right hand to Pulitzer in the newspaper. So
so you're a bad guy.
I'm kind of a bad guy. I'm a bad guy who actually, but Sights actually believes in Jack and what they've done. Like he says they wrote a good paper, so he's kind of half and half, which is probably not a.
He's the conflicted character.
He is. I'm a peacemaker in life, so this actually I think fits pretty well. Got a couple lines, a couple solo parts, so it'll be a good time. But it's a lot of fun. So I didn't realize your boys were all theater kids, man. That's awesome, man. Such a good thing.
I wasn't. We didn't plan that. Our school just has a great program, and
they love it.
Just kind of happened. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. It's great to see your kids find their spot. It's always fun to do that, which is good. Yeah. Well, Michael, hey, what's on the horizon for Highway? Let's wrap this baby up, bring it in for a landing. What are you guys working on now? Where are you headed with things? What can we expect to see?
Oh man, we're working on a lot. One of the things that we're working on that people will see soon is more around load level compliance, right? So we want to really be thoughtful around every touch point that a carrier may touch a broker. So their digital experience, whether it's the broker's native experience or through a load board or through a third party like a Parade who we integrate with. So that's a touch point, right? Email inbox is a touch point. The phone system is a touch point. And so we really want to be thoughtful about providing intervention points at every single touch point it's not like dependent on training a user to intervene, right? We want to be really thoughtful about that, just keeping the bad guys out. And then the other thing we want to be really thoughtful about is how we only sell to freight brokers. It's our customer. And so when we think about low level compliance, like we believe that their insurance underwriters should treat them differently if they're doing the right thing. We're thinking about is how to help a freight broker find efficiency in their total risk management, right? Like, hey, if you're doing things, you have better losses, like you should benefit from that somehow, right? And the people that don't, like, they should be treated differently. It's not, I think it's very unfair the way freight brokers have been treated by a lot of entities, right? The freight brokers have been forced to take on a lot of things that don't belong to them, that should have never belonged to them. And so I don't have an answer for that question today, but the more transparency we can provide and the more that we can help brokers and carriers align, I think we can push some responsibility back to some other parties.
Yeah, I love hearing that. And especially from a low level compliance perspective, it sounds like kind of putting a port of entry at every touch point just to make sure that a bad actor can't get in wherever it is. So love to see that. Can't wait to see that come down the pipe. Michael, you're just a treasure in the industry, my friend, a trove of knowledge and wisdom. And I'm so thankful to have you on the show. So thankful to call you a friend. I appreciate all your wise counsel and advice over the years from me as well. And so thanks for coming on the show, man. We'll have to have you back on soon.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Good to see you.
Get you out of here to a little house of pain on the way out. Just, because it's just. All right, man. We'll talk to you. All right, everybody, make sure you come back every Tuesday for an episode of Standing Out with great guests like Michael Caney on the show. And also make sure that you go to readsacrossamerica.org/standing out to donate to Reads Across America, our partner, and get involved. Take your team to drop wreaths at tombstones of veterans. And just incredible experience for your entire team. And finally, a quick thank you to our friends over at SPI Logistics for sponsoring the show. Check them out at success.spi3pl.com. Until next time, don't forget, friends, stop standing still, start standing out. We'll see you soon.